So y'all keep getting mad at me and saying that I keep telling y'all what not to do and not telling you what to do. And despite the fact that that is very much not the case, as I have made hundreds of videos telling you how to do activism, I realize my best bet is to just make these videos, be very straightforward about it, and put them all in a nice little folder for you guys, so I can just point you in that direction every time y'all say something like, "You're just doing what the capitalists do, and say that there's no way to make real change, you just shoot down all of our ideas." Okay, Chief. So we are going to start with the foundation of what every single activist movement needs, which is mutual aid. There's a reason I make so many videos about mutual aid. It is because it is your first step. You need mutual aid and community organizing, and these things have to be done in tandem. And the reason that y'all are so opposed to this is because it is a slog. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So first off, what is mutual aid? It's when people get together and meet each other's needs. That's it. Now, mutual aid is not the same as charity, but charity is a part of mutual aid. Like, you do have to make sure that the least of these is taken care of, but you have to do it with the understanding that these are members of your community and not just go into it like a savior who is there to make the world better. Your homeless neighbors are still your neighbors. Treat them like your friends. When I was still working at the UCC, we used to make sack lunches for unhoused people and put them on our doorstep because we were right by a gas station where a lot of unhoused people like to hang out. And in exchange, a lot of those people would clean up the trash around the church. And we didn't ask them to do that. They just did it because they realized that at least me and my team were going to treat them with dignity and respect. And the guy who used to clean up the most trash actually has an apartment now. I'm real happy for him. So how can we engage in mutual aid? You can engage in mutual aid by helping to watch people's kids. You can make meals for people. You can organize to make sure that people get medical supplies. You can ensure that people who are on strike have their needs met. You can create co-ops and free stores. This is why I say that churches are a great example of mutual aid, or at least they should be. I was at a church a couple of months ago, and someone in the community had died. And every single one of those old ladies got together and made a whole meal for the funeral service and gave the family food to take home as they were grieving. Mothman Ministries, my church, is trying to build a care team right now. We have a lot of projects going on, but it's in the works that will, bring people soup when they are sick, make people a care basket when they have a new baby. This is the essence of mutual aid, and it is your first step. You will literally not be able to successfully pull off much else if you do not do this. But you're probably asking, how do I get all these people together to do this? And that is where community organizing comes into play. And the reason I did mutual aid first and not community organizing is because they kind of simultaneously can work together. So I will see you in part 2. So this is how to do an activism part 2. These do not have to be watched in sequential order, but I do highly recommend watching all of them. And part 2 is community organizing. And Meowser has come to help with community organizing. So the bedrock of community organizing is providing people with stuff to do. Like, community organizing is actually way more complicated than that, and we can talk about, what all that entails once you get past the first steps. But the first step is providing people with stuff to do. Stuff to do, ways to better themselves. So things like having a yoga group, having a movie night, having potlucks, little festivals, things that will bring people together. Because when you bring people together, that is how you find the people to do all the other stuff. And this is where your libraries will come in handy, your parks, any third spaces that will let you utilize them. And tabling events are your best fucking friend. Especially if you're having some sort of rally, tabling events are your best friend. Look for little events that will let you set up a booth for free. And we will talk about what those booths need in a later part. Just know that tabling events are your best friend. And host tabling events. You're gonna need a slightly bigger group for that, and you're gonna need partners. But this is how you get the word out. This is how you find the people. You find the people by giving them stuff to do. And do not let these events become a circle jerk. It is fine for a community organizing event to be like a little anarchist meetup at like a booze and burrito bar at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, okay? That is a thing you can do. That cannot be the only thing you do. If your group is very, very small and there's not a lot you can pull off, then you have to make sure that the event that you are creating is going to bring in the broadest range of people possible. Not just your 3 anarchist friends on campus, okay? Honestly, doing something like Food Not Bombs, or a gardening club, or partnering with a local religious institution are going to be your best bets. If you have any questions, let me know. I will do my best to answer them, okay? But we're gonna move along to part 3. Welcome to part 3 of How to Do an Activism. You do not have to watch these in sequential order, but I do ask that you watch all of them so you can get all of the information. And in this video, we're gonna make a new friend. This is Mr. Bucket. Now, what is the point of Mr. Bucket? Mr. Bucket's where you're gonna put all your bullshit. This is where we're gonna put all those fears and biases that are holding us back. Every time we get the urge to say something like, I'm not gonna work with that group of people, bloop, that's gonna go right in the bucket. Because what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at people as individuals. We aren't gonna look at people as monoliths, and we are going to make accommodations for people. Every time you have a thought that's something like, I shouldn't have to make accommodations for children and families, bloop, that goes into the bucket. Every time you want to treat gender and sexual minorities as a monolith, or act like they're fucking savior, bloop, that goes into the bucket. Every time you want to blame something on the libs, instead of taking a personal accountability for your movement, bloop, that goes into the bucket. You don't want to work with religious people because you're an anti-theist? In the bucket. Someone with different beliefs than you wants to reach across the aisle and help you with your project and try to find common ground. That little voice inside you that says, I'm not going to work with that person. In the bucket. Your cowardice? In the bucket. Definitely in the bucket. Your lack of desire to make accommodations for disabled people because you think it's inconvenient or it would take too much time? Put that shit right in that bucket. Feeling an unwavering urge to call a former Marine who is now a leftist a baby unaliver? Bucket. It goes in the bucket. The cop in your head that tells you that you need to deal with things with punitive justice? Put him straight in the fucking bucket. All that trauma that you refuse to unpack and instead turn into discourse? Here you go. Here's Mr. Bucket for you. All the comments you're about to leave me going, but, bucket. They go in the bucket. I'll see you in the next part. Alright, so this is part 4 of How to Do an Activism. You do not have to watch this in sequential order, but I do ask that you watch all of them in order to get all of the information. And today we're going to talk about propaganda. Now, propaganda is a neutral term. It is just a piece of media whose job is to spread an idea. And you fucking need it. Leftists like to do a whole lot of finger wagging, but finger wagging does not make good propaganda. People do not like that shit. It comes off as holier than thou. And my disabled buddies, who are in my comment section asking how you can help, propaganda is a great way to help if you cannot leave the house. So what kind of propaganda can we make? You know how I said tabling events are your best friend? If you are going to have tabling events, you need pamphlets. You need flyers. If you're having events, you need to flyer your community with those. You need physical propaganda made out of paper. Motherfuckers, I do not care if you go door to door. Be careful if you're gonna do that. It's ballsy as shit, but you can. The Mormons have been doing it for years for a reason. Political canvassers do it for a reason. But if you're not ballsy enough to do that, I understand. It does take a great deal of bravery and a great deal of time and patience. You will be yelled at. But, like I said, if you're not ballsy enough to do that, very few people are. Tabling events are your best friend. And for those, you're going to need informational pamphlets about who you are, about what you do, and about what you believe in. My church is putting out a chick tract in January that is going to be about how to spot a dog whistle. We're going to be making ones on transgender rights, on veterans affairs, on harm reduction, on how to treat the unhoused population. And my church personally is using scripture because that is a way to meet people where they're at. Make sure you are speaking to people in a language they understand. Keep it short, sweet, and simple. Don't frame things as if you don't do this, you're a bad person. Frame it as we need your help to do this kind thing. This thing that will benefit society. I believe you're a good person. Maybe you'll want to help us with this. Do not alienate your fucking audience by acting like a fucking asshole. The other thing you're gonna need is a social media guy. You need your meme generator, okay? And if you can find a meme generator who's like an artist, who can make little comics about this stuff, it's gonna be really helpful. If you can find somebody like me who has a big loud fucking mouth, who will get on camera and make a bunch of fucking TikTok videos. If you are in academia, if you have charisma, make some video essays. If you don't have charisma, write video essays for somebody who does. This is the place for your academics and for people who cannot get out of the house. I highly recommend Canva. They have a whole bunch of templates so you can make things pretty. Branding and marketing are parts of this. The right wing knows it. Propagandists are your optics guys. They are very important. Keep it kind, keep it educational. I will see you in the next part. This is How to Do an Activism Part 5. You do not have to watch these in sequential order, but I do ask that you watch all of them in order to get all of the information. And for this part, we're going to talk about volunteering. Because if you want people to come to your shit, then you have to come to their shit. Make sure that you and your people are seen in the community. We work with the local synagogue, the local Episcopal church. I'm part of a group of clergy called Justice and Jubilee, and we focus heavily on social justice issues within ministry. I used to work at the local homeless shelter, and I have packed boxes for the food pantry. Because I know if I want other people's hands on deck, then I have to show up and put hands on deck for them. And there are a ton of places you can volunteer. You can literally just Google volunteer opportunity and the place that you live. Another great way to volunteer is that scout leaders are always looking for people. Girl Scouts and Cub Scouts desperately need volunteers. And that gives you the chance to make an impact on future generations. Community partners are going to be vital for you. This is a group effort. You can't do it alone. Promote interfaith solidarity, work with nonprofits, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Alright, I'll see you in the next part. Alright, this is How to Do an Activism Part 6. You do not have to watch these in sequential order, but I do ask that you watch all of them in order to get the information. And in this video, we are going to talk about canvassing and other ways to help with political campaigns. Because we need a variety of tactics, okay? Before anybody comes in here and is like, you just want us to vote? No, I don't just want you to vote. But voting is part of this. Getting people who serve our interests into positions of power is important, and you are most likely to do that on the local level. That involves canvassing, phone banking. Shrewsbury has been running in my state. I am in contact with his campaign. He's a local socialist, and he's a former Marine, and he's running for office here. I think he has a good chance. And those are the kind of people you need. Those state and local representatives are really, really important. So find people you like and lift them up. Get a hold of people's campaigns and ask them what they need. And if you cannot find anyone you like, run for fucking office. We need Gen Z and Millennial and Gen X candidates. We've been letting these old farts run the show. They are out of touch. They don't know what they're doing. They're stuck in the fucking Clinton era. And the only way to get progressives in is to support them. And for them to be running. And you don't have to go run for a Senate seat right off the bat. Run for school board. Run for city council. Run for mayor. A lot of the times, Republicans are just fucking running unopposed. Get in there and then get out to your community if you are running as a candidate. Show people that we have something to offer them. Republicans have been playing the long game on this one. It's time to catch up. This is How to Do an Activism Part 7. You do not have to watch all of these in sequential order, but I do ask that you watch all of them in order to get all the information. And in this video, we're going to talk about fundraising. And this is the part I fucking hate the most. I goddamn hate fundraising. I hate when I have to do it on this platform. And I have sort of a unique model for how I do things because I am a content creator. And because I am a content creator, I have two separate funds. I have my personal fund so I can pay my bills, and so that I have these flexible hours to do more in my community, which is a luxury, and I will admit that. I have the luxury of being able to do a lot more community organizing because this is my full-time job. So I'm able to take on a lot of big projects that other people wouldn't be able to. So I have my personal fund and then I have my outreach fund. And the outreach fund is taken care of by my treasurer, because like it or not, we need money. Now, if you are a 501c3, you can do grants. Find yourself a good grant writer. But if you have like a small group, you can just get by on bake sale money. Like, do some fucking bake sales. That's also a great way to meet members of the community. Sell jewelry. Let people know that the money's going towards a good cause. One of the things my group is doing is we are going to make a cookbook that will be available to you guys online, and that we're going to put into print to fundraise at like tabling events and stuff. Another thing is that we are a ministry, and because we are a ministry, people tithe. And like I said, I have a unique model because people pay me as a content creator to do this stuff, but I am fortunate enough to do this here so that 100% of my tithes can go into my community fund. I do not get a penny from what goes into my community fund, and frankly, a great deal of my community fund is from my own pocket. But if you have a small group too, just get like 10 people together and all of you put in $10. There you go, you have $100 to do outreach with. And the more people you have putting into that pot, the more you can do. That's why it's important to make these kind of connections. This is How to Do an Activism Part 8. You do not have to watch these in sequential order, but I do ask that you watch all of them so you can get all of the information possible. And we are going to talk about education in this video, because we talked about how we need our propagandists, but we also need our researchers and educators. We need them both to help our propagandists, or to be our propagandists, and we also need people who have real life skills that they can teach to other people. If you know how to garden, how to grow food, have a little community class about that. If you are someone who knows about physical health or wants to teach self-defense classes, have a community group about that. And even if you just have a special interest you would like to share, start a little club. At least then you're like meeting people. You're building those strong community connections. Canning and jarring are skills. Cooking is a skill. Foraging is a skill. Sewing is a skill. You can offer parenting classes to help new parents and new mothers. If you are someone who specializes in early childhood education. If you know how to fill out all of the fucking paperwork so people can get benefits. If you know how to do taxes. If you know how to balance a checkbook or to take care of the elderly or to do basic first aid. These are all things you can educate people on. And the library and churches and synagogues are great third spaces to have those in. Narcan training is another one. If you know anything about Narcan training or harm reduction, go out, teach. It's an important job. That's what I'm doing right now, because this is something I have over a decade of experience in. I've made a bunch of mistakes, and now I can tell you guys how to avoid them. This is How to Do an Activism Part 9, and this is about optics, aesthetic, and marketing. This is a very important part of this. I know y'all do not like to think about it that way because it feels like capitalist shit, but holy dear God, guys, it is fucking important. And you don't have to necessarily be palatable. The right wing certainly isn't. But if you're marketing yourself as a renegade group, you have to be a renegade group. There is no shame in doing the whole "we're standing up to the system" thing. The right wing have pulled that off. You just have to know what the fuck you are doing. And if you are going to market yourself that way, you have to make it seem fucking fun. Part of the reason leftists aren't getting anywhere is because we are killjoys. Part of the reason my church is called Mothman Ministries is because that's an icebreaker question, isn't it? People want to know what the hell Mothman Ministries is, and that gives us an in to talk about what we do. Running around in fucking black masks, unless you are doing black bloc activity, you need to let it go. Walking around with a fucking hammer and sickle is going to lose every bit of support you have like that. Talking to people with super academic language and acting like a pretentious prick isn't going to get you anywhere. Talking to people in a language they understand, while being kind and compassionate and asking for their help in accomplishing this goal can really go a long way. Let people know how this can make their lives better too. Instead of saying we need to dismantle the systems of oppression put in place by the bourgeoisie in order to liberate the proletariat, just be like, does your job fucking suck? Would you like to have money to buy groceries? Well, we may have a solution for you. People do not like to be condescended to, and people do not like to be told what to do. It doesn't work. Do what works. And you can simultaneously pull off like kind of edgy, but also kind and compassionate. Have y'all ever seen those bikers who go out and like do stuff for charity? Like, it is possible. You can do it. But you have to have a vision in mind. And USSR catgirl communism with a baseball bat isn't gonna do much for you. I use scripture for a reason. Number one, it's because I do have a deeply held faith. But also, I know people will respond to that. It's something that people can relate to. It's something that people hold dear. It is practical. Be practical. This is How to Do an Activism Part 10. These do not need to be in sequential order, but I do ask you that you try to watch all of them in order to get as much information as possible. And this is where we're going to talk about things like theory and academia. And these are important parts of activism. Philosophizing, coming up with new ideas, having an academic framework that adds legitimacy to your movement, getting people to speak at college campuses. I've spoken at college campuses before. These aren't bad things, but you do have to know how to put these things into practice. Because if you're just learning these things so you can stick it to your mom and yell on the internet, you are not going to be very useful or helpful. If some of y'all academics showed up to my shit acting the way you act on the internet, I would ask you to leave. Honest to God, I mean it when I say this. I would rather have some hillbilly who accidentally misgenders me on the regular, but is willing to pick up a shovel, than an academic who's just gonna yell at me about Marx. I do not have time for it. So, where can you be useful? You can be useful when it comes to educating others. However, there's a big fucking asterisk there. Because if you are going to educate people, then you have to make sure they learn something. And that means explaining it in a way they will understand. Number 2, you can show up to city council meetings and other sort of like town square events where people are allowed to ask questions or interact with candidates, and you can have a nice fat stack of research so that those politicians know what they're actually making policy about, and to counteract them if they try to fucking lie. You can give speeches to other people in academia and network and make connections with them. And you can use that knowledge to guide yourself and others into learning new shit. Skills that will help. Now, scientists, medical professionals, people in those STEM fields, you guys are desperately needed. We can use you guys. Oh, and you can, like, network with the nonprofits, because they all speak that language, and I don't want to do it. I find that entire world very annoying. I do it, and I smile, and I have a script that lasts for about 20 minutes, but it makes me want to eat my own skin. So, my academics who know how to speak that language and do that shit, you can do that shit. You can also make sure people aren't spreading misinformation. And do research for people who want to, like, make video essays and stuff like that. But that is where you guys are needed. And frankly, I am going to need some of y'all to, like, learn some other shit. You can also be the ones to run for office. If you're smart and you know how to talk to people, you can run for office. If you thought that I was going to suck up to you guys because you have a fancy degree, you came to the wrong fucking place. This is How to Do an Activism Part 11. I have done the vast majority of these in one day, guys, and I am tired. But I believe in myself. I'm gonna keep pushing through. And one thing that y'all have been asking me about is tabling events. I keep bringing them up. So what is a tabling event? A tabling event is anywhere you can set up a table or a booth. Things like small festivals, farmers markets, solidarity events, little rallies. Anywhere you can set up a table where you can tell people about what you do and give them propaganda, okay? And these are your best friend, because this is how you get people to do your shit. This is how you spread the word and make people okay with your ideas and the stuff you're doing. These happen on college campuses a lot too. They'll have like resource fairs, and you have to do this. This is something you have to do, okay? You're gonna need a table, you're gonna need 2 people, because pee-pee breaks are gonna have to happen, and you need somebody manning that table at all times, and they have to be people who are good at talking to others. And it helps if you have like a little something to give away. Chips or keychains or whatever. People like free shit. You can also occasionally, though not always, have like a little fundraising dish out there. So it can help with that as well. And if you get big enough, you can start putting on your own tabling events. Pride events are really good as tabling events, especially if you're in like a smaller area. Meet with the local pride board or get a local pride board together and have like a tiny little pride festival and set up a table where you can distribute resources or information. Harm reduction events are another good one. Tabling events are your best friend. I cannot stress this enough. This is How to Do an Activism Part 11. I have done the vast majority of these in one day, guys, and I am tired. But I believe in myself. I'm gonna keep pushing through. And one thing that y'all have been asking me about is tabling events. I keep bringing them up. So what is a tabling event? A tabling event is anywhere you can set up a table or a booth. Things like small festivals, farmers markets, solidarity events, little rallies. Anywhere you can set up a table where you can tell people about what you do and give them propaganda, okay? And these are your best friend, because this is how you get people to do your shit. This is how you spread the word and make people okay with your ideas and the stuff you're doing. These happen on college campuses a lot too. They'll have like resource fairs, and you have to do this. This is something you have to do, okay? You're gonna need a table, you're gonna need 2 people, because pee-pee breaks are gonna have to happen, and you need somebody manning that table at all times, and they have to be people who are good at talking to others. And it helps if you have like a little something to give away. Chips or keychains or whatever. People like free shit. You can also occasionally, though not always, have like a little fundraising dish out there. So it can help with that as well. And if you get big enough, you can start putting on your own tabling events. Pride events are really good as tabling events, especially if you're in like a smaller area. Meet with the local pride board or get a local pride board together and have like a tiny little pride festival and set up a table where you can distribute resources or information. Harm reduction events are another good one. Tabling events are your best friend. I cannot stress this enough. This is part 12 of How to Do an Activism, and now we are finally going to get into the stuff that is what people generally think of when they think of activism. The fun stuff. Fun. And what we're going to start with is a rally. Now, what is a rally? Because a rally and a protest are very different things. The point of a rally is to do things like bring awareness to a certain topic or to bring people together over a political cause. Now, to have a successful rally, one will usually do this in some sort of public space, either in like a public park or near a government building. And what you're going to want is you're going to want speakers, and you need some sort of microphone or like a megaphone like I have. And you want people who know how to speak to people, who know how to give speeches. Again, this is where ministers really come in handy. We also tend to add legitimacy to a movement. You're going to want to make sure there's like water and that people are kept either cool or warm depending on the weather. You're going to want people to table to pass out information. And the point of this is not to cause a ruckus. It is to organize people. It is to educate people. It is to network with people and to come together to show support for a common goal. This is not the place to agitate. Also, snacks are helpful. Alright, this is part 13 of How to Do an Activism, and in this part we are going to talk about civil disobedience. And civil disobedience is when one breaks an unjust law as a form of protest, or who breaks a social norm as a form of protest. And this is generally considered nonviolent. It is basically the act of saying, no, I will not do that because what you have asked me to do is unjust and I will not comply. Examples of this are like when Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat because she had the right to be there same as anybody else. Draft dodging is considered a form of civil disobedience. A recent example is when Flamey Grant went to the Dove Awards. She had just as much of a right to be there as anyone else. And while what she did was not illegal, it did cause quite a fuss. The point is to break the rules, and you may be arrested. Sometimes the point is to get arrested. And in order to pull off this form of protest, you have to have fucking balls of steel. You have to be trained to do this. Because you are going into this with the expectation that you are going to be mocked, brutalized, or arrested. And what kills me is that I am not seeing a great deal of this right now. I don't see a lot of civil disobedience. For some reason, lately we've just wanted to, like, either do nothing but rallies, or, like, slightly disruptive / annoying protests, or we have, like, people on the internet who want to go straight into the revolution. But, like, you have to do civil disobedience first. Like, that option does need to be exercised. And if y'all are not ballsy enough to do that, you certainly are not ballsy enough to do the revolution. Alright, this is part 14 of how to do an activism, and today we're going to talk about the opposite of civil disobedience, malicious compliance. And this is where you follow a rule so well, it's annoying. You have to run on Amelia Bedelia logic here, okay? You're technically doing what is asked of you, but in a way that pisses everybody off. For example, I don't know if you've seen the video of those workers at a store that were told that they needed to greet every customer. So every time someone walked in, they started doing it in unison and in a really monotone voice so that it was super freaky and creeped everybody out. Were they doing what was asked of them? Yes. Was it also unsettling? Yes. When Jesus talks about turning the other cheek, this is what he's talking about. Another example is paying a parking ticket in pennies. You're doing what you're told. You're not technically breaking the rules, but you want to do it in a way that is so literal that it causes whoever you're dealing with immense frustration. Alright, this is part 15 of how to do an activism, and now we're going to start getting into forms of direct action. And the first one I want to talk about, and the most popular one, is a march. And that is when people march from one area to another, holding signs or banners. They usually do chants, and the goal is to raise awareness or to put political pressure on politicians. I have to say, marches, unless they are very, very well executed, do not have a great deal of political power. Unless your march is disrupting something, like really, really holding up traffic or refusing to leave a government building, they aren't really gonna do much to sway politicians anymore. It's too easy for politicians to just hide away. Now, if you were marching to a politician's house and doing it outside their house, now that could get them pretty upset. If you are blocking a major bridge, that could have some political power. But you'd really have to hold your ground on that one, and that would be really rough. You would need, like, medics and stuff like that. And marches are so common that it's really, really difficult to get them to make an impact. Now, marches can also be used as, like, a show of solidarity. They're not inherently bad. You just can't be under the impression that they're going to change a whole lot. They do have their purpose. It can bring people together, and it can certainly bring awareness to something. But like I said, in this day and age, it's really, really easy for politicians to just ignore them. So unless you are doing a march that is persistent enough and intrusive enough for them, it's not really going to change their minds. Alright, so a lot of what we do on this channel is talk about ways we can change things without just screaming on the internet, right? So I want to talk to you about something that Quakers have been passionate about for a while. It is known as war tax resistance. And it is a series of ways one can interrupt war taxes. And there are legal ways of doing this and illegal ways of doing this. And I want to tell you right now, if you engage in illegal forms of war tax resistance, you are probably going to jail. It is illegal war tax resistance. And of course, illegal war tax resistance involves not paying your taxes. But there are other ways to engage in war tax resistance. The first one, and probably the most difficult, other than, going to jail, is known as simple living resistance, which means making so low of an income you are not required to file. There is also a form you can fill out when you file your taxes. You do still have to pay them, but this form is submitted as an act of protest. You can send letters in with your check. You can send letters to the editor to your local newspaper around tax time. You can pass out leaflets or protest outside of places like H&R Block. Hand out information about war taxes, about how much of our money actually goes to war. You can also pay your taxes with hundreds of checks or coins. You can just write hundreds of checks for pennies, or pay in pennies, and send a letter that you are doing this because you are protesting war tax. You can also petition your government to have a separate fund set aside for conscientious objectors. Now, is all of this going to do much? Well, I can say that Quakers have been trying to do this for a long time, and we have not yet been successful. And a lot of Quakers have gone to jail. But in order to get something like this done, there has to be numbers. And I am not going to tell you to do anything illegal. I understand the cost that comes with that. All I am doing is laying out something you can do. And if thousands of people start paying their taxes in pennies, or in small checks that cost more to cash than they are actually worth, people are going to start taking notice. So just know, this is a thing you can do. Alright, so we need to have a little talk. We need to have a talk about our relationship to social media and what this app is and is not capable of. Now, I'm going to be referencing some stuff from this video, but I'm going to try to make it so that you don't have to watch this first. However, if you want to watch this first, that's amazing. If not, please, please, please watch it afterwards. And I'm going to be adding this to my How to Do an Activism playlist. And these are going to be the points we're going over. So I want to start here. TikTok will not save the world. A lot of you are under the impression that you can organize here and only here, and that that's going to be enough to change things. And I said that this was going to be a tough series. A lot of this is going to be hard to hear. You cannot change things purely through social media. Now, there's a lot of things social media can do. We're going to be going over that later in the series. But if you are doing the majority of your organizing here, I hate to say it, but you are doomed to failure. In this video, Abigail Thorne brings up Occupy Wall Street and how it was one of the first major protest movements with a heavy social media component. And she brings up how OWS did not stick the landing. And as someone who was with that protest movement, who dedicated my life to it for 8 months, she is 100% correct on this. We were doomed to failure from the beginning. And looking back on it, I can see that now. We had no central leadership. We had no one organizing us, telling us what to do. A lot of us were homeless or college kids, and we didn't know our activism from our asshole, and we needed a level of guidance we simply did not get. And the guidance and organization we did have in the beginning began to wear off pretty quickly. When compared to, movements like ACT UP, who were very organized, they had houses, they had underground rings distributing medicine, they were doing these very deliberate, direct actions. We were just kind of smoking weed and getting hit by the police a lot, because we didn't really know what we were doing. Don't get me wrong, we had goals, we had demands, we had things we wanted. But the longer things went on, the kind of more amalgamous that got. There was a heavy clash between people who wanted a class-based movement and people who wanted to focus more on certain identity politics. And we were cold, and we were drinking, and we were on substances, and people were being SA'd, and people were ODing or freezing to death. And it all fell apart before we could accomplish anything. And let me tell you, that failure is one of the worst things I have ever experienced. To go through all of that. The beatings, the arrests, the freezing, the SA multiple times. And to come out the other end with nothing, with everyone treating you as a laughingstock, feels like shit. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that we had this heavy social media component. We got a bunch of people out, and a lot of them were very passionate, but we had no central leadership, we had no media training, we had very little organization, and it flopped. And every time I see y'all, trying to do a general strike with this, heavy social media component, it's all I can think of. As Abigail says in her video, these days, it's easier than ever for someone to join a protest movement. And it's easier than ever for people to drop out of them. We keep having these movements that are flashes in the pan, and we have no way to sustain them, because social media simply does not allow us to organize in this way. And we need to start accepting that. This is why I am on y'all all the time. Go out, go into your community, start building things. Utilize what you have, because that is the only way this will get done. And that doesn't mean these social media-based movements get nothing done. And media is a very important element to a protest movement. But there has to be more. You have to have leadership. Please look into the resources that people used to use in order to organize protest movements before there was social media. you're gonna learn a lot more from that. Social media is incapable of holding people accountable, and we need to accept that. This is part 2 in my series on organizing in social media. You don't necessarily have to watch these in order, but just know I will be making references to this video, and I highly recommend checking it out either before or after this series. So let's talk about accountability. Now, a question that I have been asking on this channel for like 4 years now is, when we talk about holding people accountable, what does that actually mean? What does that look like? We keep using this word, accountability, accountability, accountability. But what do we actually mean by that? What are we trying to accomplish? And so far, I have never gotten an answer to this. At least not an honest one. So let's go with like a standard answer, right? Accountability means holding people responsible for their actions. Okay, but what does that mean? What does it mean to hold someone responsible for their actions? Because I would argue that true accountability requires someone to make amends, to take responsibility for one's sins and actions, and work towards repairing the harm they've caused. And social media can't do that. Not only can social media not do that, it actively de-incentivizes it. Because should someone try to make amends, they're torn apart for it. They have things brought up from 10 years ago. And that doesn't make people change. It just makes them feel like shit and like they can't change. And so they just keep doing the same shit because there is no incentive to better oneself. So we need to be honest with ourselves about what we actually want. We don't want accountability. We don't want justice. We want punishment. And social media can only deliver one type of punishment, and that is public humiliation. And it is a punishment we cannot provide on a sliding scale. Having a bad hot take has the same punishment as doing a microaggression, and that has the same punishment as saying something horribly racist, and that has the same punishment as being a predator, and that has the same punishment as being cringe. That is not justice. That is not accountability. We are trying to make this app do something it is not capable of. And what I am seeing from myself, from other content creators, we're just going numb. We're going numb. We don't care what any of you say anymore. Because we can't tell if you are genuinely trying to help or critique our work, or if you are out for blood. If you are just angry and thirsty for revenge and wanting to take your bad day out on somebody. We can't tell the difference. So you can't hold us accountable. And the politicians, they don't give a shit. They don't see any of your comments. They have staffers who take care of all of that. The information you're trying to give them never reaches them. So you can't punish them either. This app is fucking with our sense of justice. What justice is, what accountability is, what they mean. We are sorting people into good and bad. And if you're good, you're held on a pedestal and to standards you will never be able to reach. And if you are bad, you deserve everything that's coming to you. And that's not justice. That's not accountability. Now, what we can use this app for is having discussions about what justice and accountability should look like. But I've made entire series on this and they never get any views because that's not the conversation people want to have. What they want is the catharsis of punishment. They want the catharsis of being able to beat someone down because all the problems in this world feel big and overwhelming and scary. And that's a valid feeling, but you need to stop lying to yourself. This isn't about repairing the world. It's about you feeling like you have a little more control. Is it my day off? Yes. Am I working right now because I only have $10 in my bank account? Also yes. So we are going to continue on with our series. Do I have a filter on? I did, but I kind of hate this more. Whatever, I don't care. Alright, so we're continuing on with our series about like social media and organization and activism. And for the next part, I would like us to try to define some popular phrases within online leftist spaces. And I'm not saying we come up with a definition today. We're not going to be able to do that. But I think we need to start thinking about what these phrases mean, both in regards to the way we interact with each other online and the way we interact with the world at large. Because as we discussed earlier in the series, the internet cannot provide accountability. So the only people really capable of holding us to account is ourselves. And that means we have to start acting with a certain level of self-awareness. And I think some of these phrases are a good place to start with that. So we already talked about the phrase accountability in one of our earlier videos, but I would like you to ponder it a bit more. What does it mean to hold someone accountable? And what do we actually want? Because a lot of us talk about, down here, restorative justice. But the way a lot of y'all talk online, you don't actually want that. You don't want restorative justice. You don't want police abolition or prison abolition. You've heard that prisons are bad things to believe in, and that restorative and redemptive justice will make our justice system better. But a great deal of you have never thought about what that actually looks like, because you have no idea how to think about justice without thinking about punishment. You don't think about justice in terms of, like, creating a more equal and just world where people are treated ethically. You think about it in that you want people to get what they deserve. As long as you keep thinking like that, restorative justice and prison abolition are off the table. Those things fundamentally cannot exist as long as we think of justice in terms of punishment. The next phrase I want to talk about is respect. And you may have seen a meme going around, and the meme is like, some people think that respect is when you need to treat someone like a person, and other people think respect is when you need to treat someone like an authority. And so I think it's important that we really think about what kind of respect we're asking for. The next thing I think we need to talk about is the concept of boundaries. I heard someone, I forget what creator said it, but they said, what we have now is a generation that has perfect boundaries and no friends. And I think that, honestly, we've begun to have pretty unrealistic expectations when it comes to social interaction. We only want to be around people who are just like us, and that's not good. We need to be around people who challenge us as well. That's how you create a moral compass. That's how you learn and grow as a person. Are we setting a boundary, or are we building a wall that keeps us from interacting with other people? The next thing I want to talk about is safety. What does safety mean? We talk a lot about keeping ourselves safe. But babes, I don't know if you've noticed, the shit's not safe. The shit's not safe, babe. The safety is straight out the window. And activism is always going to carry a certain amount of risk. Let's be really honest with ourselves. Sometimes it means getting beat up. Sometimes it means going to jail. And a lot of the time, it means being uncomfortable. And I think that's what a lot of people actually mean when they talk about safety. Especially people with the same skin color as me. When a lot of white people talk about safety, what they are actually talking about is comfort. You are not going to be unsafe if you bake your elderly neighbor a pie. Like, there is a 99.99999% chance you will be absolutely fine. But that makes you uncomfortable. And so you'll come up with a million reasons why that's unsafe. The next thing I want to talk about is community. What does it mean to have community? What does it mean to organize a community? What's the difference of an online community and a real-life community? What are the pros and cons of each? And that brings us to our last one, spaces. I'm going to be real, y'all. I don't think we should have leftist spaces anymore. I don't. I think they're useless. They have been continually useless, both online and in person. I think we should have spaces leftists can be in, but the best leftist spaces aren't leftist spaces. They're just places where you feed people, places where you make friends. And I don't think we should not get our spaces privileges back until we can figure out how to interact with people who are different than us, which we are incredibly bad at. So I think we need to just have spaces, places where people can go, and you need to go to them if they exist, because we talk all the time about, oh, we need third places, we need third spaces. Babes, y'all are not getting off the internet and going to those. So you need to go to those. If you want them to survive, you have to go. Yeah, lefties don't need our own spaces until we can learn how to interact with broader society again.